apparently we're having a talk on some sort of flowering cactus.
Looks like it.
Yeah. Of which there are a whole lot over here that you can purchase from Brent. And he's going to give us a talk on his hybridizing efforts and other hybrids.
Well, he's going to do a demo on how he's doing it.
Oh, okay. We're going to do a demo on how you pollinate it?
So this is basically what he's going to talk about.
All right.
Prepared this time.
So I'm going to get out of the way.
Okay.
Brent, let me just, before you start. In May, we're going to be very busy here in the next 3 months. And starting May the 1st, actually, it's going to be our 84th anniversary here at ESA. We were founded in 1940 at Montmeyer's Epiphyllum Nursery in Ventura. And that's where all the collectors at that time, again, this is 1940, there were collectors, hybridizers, and nursery owners, and there was about 15 of them. It's like a who's who. And there's a picture of that whole group that is out the internet, and I'm gonna try to post it on our website. And also, our flower show is also the third Sunday of the month, and I believe it'll be here. Okay, it'll be over here. And Geneva has posted the rules and regulations regarding the flower show itself. There's going to be trophies and ribbons, so this is the time to make sure that you take care of your buds, and hopefully you'll have some flowers. Things don't always work out because flowers have a tendency of blooming when they're not supposed to be blooming during flower shows. They bloom before or after the flower show. And in June, we're going to be taking part of the Fern Society show. Again, it's just outside of this area here. And again, we're going to be maybe selling some cuttings and things like that. But I normally participate in it because it's one of the few places that they really have a great show. They have a raffle, and all the things that they raffle as prizes is fantastic. There's a lot of fertilizers, soil for, for a great prize, and chances are you're going to win something. It's always fun. And then in July, mid-July, we're also going to take part with the Plumeria show. So again, if you collect plumerias are actually part of the cactus succulent family. So they all go in there, and this will probably be the time that they would be in bloom. So kind of keep that in mind. And also, we're going to have, back in May, we're going to have Epicon, and which is the fourth Saturday of the month. And if you didn't sign up for the show in March, it's gonna cost you about $60 now, starting. 75. Okay, so now it's $75, and you could participate or join online, and it's pretty much an all-day event. So if you have any questions, you can talk to me or some of the regulars here. And what else do we need to talk about? Oh, is there anybody here for the first time? First timers? Oh, wow. Okay. How did you guys hear about us? We just want to know.
Online with the Epiphyllum.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, well, great. So next month, we're going to have a show on Epiphyllum, so it's a good time to come back and see what Epiphyllum flowers look like if you haven't been here.
We are getting some buds in Dominica, so it's hard to say in another month if we'll have flowers. We might start blooming. We're getting small buds on a lot of the different plants.
Gumby, you want to introduce your guest? This is his first time, right?
I'm Chris. This is the first time here. So you told me about a lot of plants, I'm learning a lot from this man.
We don't have the small cacti to give away.
Yeah,
We do? We do have them?
in my car.
Okay. Well, there's at least 4 people who would get them, okay? When you get a chance, Kim. You get a free rooted Epiphyllum plant in 3 inches. So you'll get a head start for next year.
That's our usual gift for first time.
Right. And anyway, like we had Brent here last year, and he's back, like I said, back by popular demand. And I always loved his nursery and his website. I have a lot of Trichos series, not from him, but I've had them for a good 15 years from Rainbow Gardens. So they're really this big already, or this tall, that I got from Chuck and Jerry. But he has literally hundreds of different varieties of Trichos series, Echinopsis, and Bebia. And tonight he's going to be talking about hybridizing Trikes and Bebia and Echinopsis with different results, and I think some of them are here. And again, thank you, Brent.
Anyone who's first time can come and get a plant. These are rather small. It's been raining almost every weekend, so I haven't gotten much done up there this year. But whoever's the first time member, visitor can come and pick up one.
All right. Well, thank you for coming, and thank you for having me back. My name's Brent Wigand, and I came today with my wife Nanette, my son Neil back there. And my son Neil helps me with some of the heavy lifting because he's 23 and I'm not. And my wife does, she's become the weed master. She's the weed ninja, gets weeds out of my cactus pots so I don't have to. So that does help me a lot. Anyhow, thank you for coming back, letting me come back and being interested in these plants. Now I know these aren't epiphyllums, but some of the flowers do look similar. So instead of these hanging from the top down, I always say you can fill up your greenhouses with these plants going from the bottom up and have the best of both worlds. So anyhow, if you don't mind, I'm gonna sit tonight. I've been battling something for a long time. It's not COVID, don't worry. But I think it's just better off that I sit, and I'm gonna do the best I can with the voice that I got left. It was worse last week, but I did make it, so I'm here. All right, so I thought, let's just start out with who I am, and we're gonna look at a lot of beautiful pictures. So I've been growing cactus since I was 5 years old, and the story goes, I was at the grocery store, and my mom saw me looking at a bunch of plants in the produce department. She goes, oh, you like those? Why don't you just buy one, or take one, and I'll pay for it. So I bought one, took it home, and I promptly watered it every day until it died. And I got emotional about it. I was like, oh, my cactus is dead, you know? And I think she thought that was funny because she told her friends how emotional I got about my plant dying. So her friends took pity on me and had plants in their backyard and pots they weren't taking care of. So they brought all these plants over to my house and gave it to me. So then I had this instantaneous collection of miscellaneous cactus, which I thought was great. So that's kind of where it started. And I've been into plants my whole life. I grew up in a nursery, and our nursery was where we lived, and we lived next door to a nursery, so nursery's in my blood. And plant collecting is definitely in my blood. And beautiful flowers are most definitely something I'm passionate about. I used to be into a lot of palms and cycads and things like that, which I still am, but these things are so beautiful that even today, after collecting these for so long, I wake up and sometimes the flowers just blow me away. I'm just shocked at what I see. So I thought it would be best to just go on. This is my Instagram page. Instead of showing one at a time, I'm actually gonna scroll down and I'm gonna point at each plant that I'm talking about. I don't know if you can see that pointer. And I'll talk about each plant, not every single plant, but most of them. So this is a Trichoceras here. Trichoceras are cactus, Trichoceros and Echinopsis labivia, the genus of cactus, pretty much start right where the US-Mexican border is, and they can occur all the way down into mid-Argentina. So there's a wide distribution of different species. They're still finding some of these things in various places, a lot of strange subspecies, and most of them are temperate and can take quite frosty conditions. So one of the most interesting things is we live in a zone 9 climate, and in 2007 we got 1 foot of snow that covered all the plants for a week. I thought my life was over, my nursery was over. I was thinking, you know, as soon as this melts and all my plants die, I'm just gonna do something else. And lo and behold, it melted and the plants actually liked it. And they bloomed better. So some of the Trichoceros actually do better with some cold chill. And we can actually grow them here in California quite well, and probably the best climates in the United States. The Southwest definitely does well. In Florida, they don't get enough chill in Florida and the Carolinas, and they don't flower very well. So we're very fortunate to have those. So this one here is called Trichoceros triple sec. This is one that I named. It's actually a plant that I bought from somebody, and it came out as a mistake. It's one of the best mistakes I ever bought. And it was supposed to be a purplish colored flower, which it wasn't. This one's called water lily. This one was done by another breeder out in Tucson, Arizona. This one right here is just flowered for the first time, and this one is called orange peony. And I got this one from crossing flying saucer with Trichoceros Dutchman's Gold, which is a cupped plant. So I use flying saucer a lot for my hybridization because it has just good genetics. And you want good genetics when you want high performance plants. This is going to be touchy, so I'm going to do this by looking at it. This is another hybrid, not mine, but came out of Europe. I did a lot of importing. I'm not doing a lot of importing anymore because the ag department takes everything I import. So beware. If you want to buy these from eBay Germany and eBay Spain, you can go on there, and the chances of getting it, you'll get some, but after they figure it out, they'll just take all your stuff. So it's not really worth doing it. And then if you do import, you better take care of your plants and quarantine them and clean them and make sure nothing travels across the pond and infects our stuff here. So there's some interesting things. This is also a Trichoceros. This is Trichoceros peruvianus from South America, and this is a monstrose version of the plant, as you can see. It crests, but it'll also revert. So this area right here is a revert, and that's what the normal plant looks like. Now the crested portion will not flower, but the revert does. And the revert has the same genetics as the plant. So I actually pollinated it with a labivia, and it succeeded. And I actually have seedlings of it over there, the flat in the middle. Those are Trichoceros peruvianus, this one, times Labivia nikita. So you can cross Labivias, Echinopsis, Trichoceros. You can also cross Hildewintria, Torchcactus, and I was talking to Jim today. You can actually cross these with Epiphyllum. It's been done. It's very, very rare that it succeeds, but it has been done, and there's a few people in Europe right now growing hybrids of those plants. And the funny thing is they don't look anything like Epiphyllums. They look like Echinopsis. But we haven't seen them bloom yet, so we'll have to see what happens there. This is a plant that is actually a curse because everybody wants it, and this plant never offsets. I've had it for 9 years, and I have about 5 plants, and I never get any offsets. So everybody asks me for it at least twice a week for the last 9 years, and I have to tell everybody I don't have any. And if I did, I'd probably have a lot of money right now. So this is the infamous and famous flying saucer, my favorite cactus of all cactus. If I had to choose one, and I could only have one plant on my patio, that would definitely be it. I actually brought a few today for sale. Hans Britches of Western Cactus, who's now passed on. Believe it or not, Hans Britches was the person I bought my first plant from when I was 5 years old. He was the contractor for the grocery store that supplied the succulents. So it's really funny to see the full circle. Hans actually was the person who sold me the first plant, and then Hans actually was the one who got me interested in Trichoceres and Echinopsis hybrids. And he really never took much credit for this plant. I asked him one day, who made this? And he goes, I did. And so I was really kind of blown away at that. This plant will bloom 7 times a year if you feed it correctly. And this plant right here has about 15 flowers on it. This is dated 2013. And the flowers will last 2 or 3 days, go down, and then more buds will bloom and bloom and bloom. So it's not just like a daylily where it's a one and done. The flowers may only last a couple of days, but you'll get more flowers and more flowers and more flowers. So the more mature the plants get, the more rooted they are, the healthier they are, the more you feed them, the more flowers you're going to get. And these plants, they do like water. They're very, I call them summer growers. They're not winter growers. I don't know if you know the difference between summer and winter growing. Our winter growing plants don't like a whole lot of summer water, and our summer growing plants don't want a whole lot of winter water. Well, these can take both, but they definitely do most of their growing between April and all the way to November. And they can bloom from April all the way to November with fertilizing. Here's some other new ones. This is a little Echinopsis called Napia. It only gets about 12 inches tall, beautiful bicolored pink and yellow flowers. And now we're trying to take these things and cross them onto Trichoceres peruvianus pachanoi, and even things like Trichoceres terschekii. I'll show you a picture of Trichoceres terschekii, but it looks like a saguaro. Think of a saguaro cactus being crossed with a miniature Echinopsis. So we're really doing some crazy things, and it's a lot of fun. So I grew up next door to a daylily and iris farm, and I really was passionate about daylilies. I still am. I'm on a daylily society, and I look at all the pictures and things. And back in the 80s and early 90s, I remember what the daylilies looked like and what the best ones in the country looked like. And if you could fast forward 35 years and look at all the genetics and the breeding that's been done in the last 35 years, in the 80s and 90s, they never thought that would be possible, to have all this genetic variability and mutated bicolor, tricolor, quadricolor flowers. So the genetics play out a lot like daylilies, and they're not very, very difficult genetics to figure out. And we're getting some really, really good results. This is a plant that bloomed for me this spring, and I measured it. It's 10.5 inches from tip to tip. So that's almost the size of a dinner plate. And so I've nicknamed this one OMG. It's technically BSDG 1449 BR2, but that's the code for the seedling. But we're gonna call that one OMG. I think that's properly named. So I'm collecting pollen off of that to use on different species and different hybrids in the garden. I also do a lot of aloes. I don't want to divert into aloes, but this is an aloe that got my attention a long time ago. This is Aloe ferox, which is the Cape aloe from South Africa. 99% of them are orange, but there is small populations of these plants and habitat that have white flowers. Sometimes yellow, sometimes pink, so just a neat thing. Aloes and cactus and epiphyllums and all of them have a lot of the same growing requirements, and so they're very compatible in your shade house, in your garden and things like that, so they can be planted together very well. This is actually an interesting hybrid. This is a Torchcactus, or a monkey tail cactus, crossed with an Echinopsis. And this is called Hildewintria. Really, it's an intergeneric hybrid, but it's a cross between that and an Echinopsis. The one thing about Torchcactus and Chamroceres, which are peanut cactus, is they have very, very sharp two-tone flowers, very clean colors. And when you cross them to Echinopsis and Trichoceres, you can get a lot of really interesting color combinations, such as this one. So you get this real sharp contrast on the edges of the flowers with pink in the inside. Now this flower is just opening, so it's a little bit more compact. When it fully opens, it looks completely different. So it's really kind of fun. So many different things. I'm sure you're gonna see some different things along here. This is a Lobivia. This plant only gets 6 inches tall, but you can see the beautiful two-tone colors between the red and almost pure white. And so we're gonna be using that a lot for breeding. The plant's really nice. It's almost a short spine plant. So we have long spines and short spines, and I'm also trying to work on no spines, because who wouldn't want a cactus with no spines? So we're getting there. but there's a few genetic things. Here's another Hilda Wentria hybrid. This is Hilda Wentria times, Chamroceras, peanut cactus. And the flowers will bloom all the way from the base of the plant all the way to the top. So you just get all these little flowers like an orchid just hanging out on the plant there. Just gonna keep track of time. This is another Labivia from China. China is big on Labivias. Big. All the Asian countries have lots and lots of Labivias. They also graft them onto different cactus because they're so wet. So a lot of the Echinopsis trichoceros don't like to be that humid, that wet all the time because it rains so much in Thailand, China, different provinces. They graft them. And so they'll have these long stems with these balls of the offsets and all these flowers on top. It's really kind of a different way of growing them. But you'll see a lot of that. We don't have to do a lot of grafting because our climate is compatible. This is an interesting plant. This is Verres 10 from Eddie Verres in Spain. This is an example of a serrated flower. And serration is what I call all these edges on the side right here. So now we're starting to get serrated flowers with short spines. And this is particularly white, but there's other colors of serrated. I brought this one today. There's a few sitting over there. That's Betty Boom. This is a short spine. One of the best growers. It gets about 2 feet straight up, doesn't bend over, makes a nice clump, stays in a pot happily for decades, and blooms at least 5 or 6 times a year with these beautiful pink and peach bicolored flowers. And it's always good to take photographs of your flowers because with fertilization, different light, different soils, they can actually change a little bit with the color. One year you'll see this great color change, and then the next year it almost looks like you have a different plant. And that can happen from fertilizers too. So you gotta kind of watch out what fertilizers you use because it can play some tricks on you. One of the biggest complaints I have is people buy my plants, mail order, they grow up, and they said, that doesn't look like the plant in the picture. You must have sold me the wrong plant. And you know, I'm sure it's happened. I've definitely sold the wrong plant on occasion. You know, anybody misses a label or misplaces a label, but fertilizer can play a lot of tricks on you. So these plants can be a little susceptible to a high pH. Let me scroll down a little bit. These are more indicative of what we'll see in Thailand, China right now. So hard to get. I started to get some and I was getting them through the mail okay. And they must have some algorithm. I think they know my name. And there's 3 kinds of dogs in the airport. There's the bomb sniffing dog, the drug sniffing dog, and there's the ag department dog. I'm not making this up. And they smell for plants. So I don't recommend it. And they're pretty much shutting that down anyhow. You didn't hear that from me. This is a little Labivia I got from somebody. There's actually a Schick hybrid. I grew the seeds and this came out. Just beautiful. The red really doesn't show up, but it's just the most berry red you've ever seen. So I nicknamed this one Berrylicious. There's another Labivia, just with great color form. I wish I could make that flower. That flower is only about 2.5, 3 inches in diameter. But again, if you cross it with these giant trichoceros with big flowers, you can get big flowers. So I was going to show you an example of a miniature. Let me show you this. This is a little trick here. Let me see if I can show you the next picture. Now, this flower usually was pink for me, all pink, for the first 5 years I owned it. And I thought I got the wrong plant from the seller. Well, when I changed the pH and lowered the pH of my fertilizers, this came out. It's no longer all pink. It has this beautiful play between peach, yellow, and pink. It's just fantastic. But I would have never figured that out if I hadn't played around with the fertilizer. Let me see. There's another little Labivia. So I'm just having a good time with all these flowers. What is this one? This is Pink Party Cake. I brought that one. This one holds the record. No, that's Royal Red. Sorry, I should be able to read my own stuff. Pink Party Cake looks like this, but this one blooms all the time. And when they bloom, you can't even see the plant. This is one of my go-to hybridizers. Just makes really interesting hybrids. Let's see if I can show you that. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. and then I'm going to go into some other different types of hybrids that I've made and show you some examples of that. And then I'm going to tell you how I collect pollen. If you want to be your own pollinator and create your own hybrids, it's not that hard. So we're going to do a pollination 101 and how to keep the bugs from messing up your pollinating. And then I got a trick on how to clean seeds. So I've done every kind of cleaning seeds on the planet, and I'm going to show you one of the best methods that I've been able to come up with. So pollen, you need pollen if you're going to make a hybrid. And so every time I show this picture, it's on Instagram. People write me personally all the time, how did you get so much pollen? Like, it's really hard to get pollen. Flowers don't seem to have it. They open up and either the bugs take it all or they take it at night or whatever the case may be. So I'm going to show you my tricks on how to get pollen and how to store it and how to use it for hybridization. So this is really kind of cool. This is a Labivia, but not just any Labivia. So I took a small Labivia and I took one of the largest Trichoceres and I crossed it onto the little Labivia, which should only be about 2.5, 3 inches tall. And this is a seedling right here off of that plant. So this is a 4-year-old seedling, and I think it's going to probably get bigger than the diameter of this pot and probably about 1 foot tall. And that's the flower that it had right there. So that's pretty exciting. We can take these little miniatures, cross them with some of the larger forms, and get larger looking miniatures, if that makes sense. Larger miniatures. It's like jumbo shrimp, I think, something like that. And then when I'm done talking, I'm going to open this up to any questions that you might have and different things like that. Just more color combinations. The Echinopsis. The Trichoceres are going to be the first to bloom. And Trichoceres, what do I mean by that? They're generally the taller plants, anything over 2 feet, more slender than wide. I call those Trichoceres. And Echinopsis are more squatty, barrel-shaped, round plants that clump. And Labivias are smaller than that. They're miniatures and they generally clump and they don't get more than 6 to 10 inches tall. And so, but we have so many hundreds, if not thousands of different hybrids. There's every variation in between. So you may call this one a tricho, somebody else might call it an Echinopsis. There's names out there like Tricholobivia, you'll hear that. That's really not a name, it's just kind of an amalgamation of names and different things. Just all kinds of beautiful ones. This is actually one of the last Schick hybrids that he did. This is for Norma, and I love the answer up there, OMG. For Norma, and that's his wife. So he named this after his wife. It's a little person that used to do a lot with the Huntington Botanical Gardens and was one of the first really scientific hybridizers here in California. He's still going, but he's fully retired now. I've actually never met him. I'd like to. I think John said he would introduce me to him if we could. Stripies. This is something that's very passionate for me, is making striped plants like this. There is a secret ingredient to this. All of these stripies were made using one particular hybrid called Wurlitz. And if you cross this purple flower of Wurlitz onto something orange or yellow, you'll end up with these stripies like this. It's really kind of strange. So I was very eager to get that plant into the country, and I've been eagerly trying to hybridize with it. And the pollen was so important to me. I needed this Wurlitz pollen so I could make my own striped plants. So when my plants were blooming in the shade house, I didn't want any rats or mice eating my flowers. So I took all of my Wurlitz plants into the garage to open overnight to keep them away from the animals. And when I came into the garage in the morning, I don't know what did it, but something mowed off and ate every single flower.
Oh my gosh.
So I only ended up with 1 or 2 flowers of Wurlitz, so I didn't get to do the hybridizing I wanted. Of all the plants they could have eaten, they had to eat that one. So Chamaeroceras are also called peanut cactus. Peanut cactus are really cool and they're very underrated. And I think they're fantastic because most of them don't get more than 10 inches tall. They cluster. You really can't kill them. They look half dead in the wintertime. They come back to life in the spring. They bloom their heart out from the first hot day. The first day of 80 degrees, they'll start blooming and they won't stop until about October. So you'll have flowers all summer long. And they actually hybridize incredibly well with Trichoceres, Echinopsis, Labivias, and Torchcactus. In fact, all the Hilderwintera, I'd say 85% of all the Hilderwintera hybrids coming out of Europe are not Hilderwintera hybrids at all. They're Cleistocactus crossed with Echinopsis. They don't want to tell you that. They don't really want to tell you how they're doing it. But you kind of get an idea for it after a while. This is one done by Eddie Veres in Spain, Veres 19. I actually crossed this with Flying Saucer. I have them over there. And yeah, that's a really neat plant. Just incredible color combinations. This is the corncob cactus. This has actually almost no spines on it. And it was crossed with Thelagonus and came out with this beautiful pink color. Just incredible, incredible plant. Here's another variation of serrated flowers. And we have one over here on the table called Super Apricot. It looks a lot like that one, but this is Pullerstern, another form of it. This is Super Apricot. I brought a couple of those tonight. Beautiful plant, gets about 2.5 feet tall, short spines, and the cuticle, the green part of the cactus is actually shiny. It's really pretty plant. This is me being crazy. I'm always crazy. You'd have to be crazy to work with so many cactus. I think at any given time I have about 10 spines in my hands. You just get used to it after a while. Getting poked with cactus is 90% psychological, 10% pain. When you first start out, it's 90% pain, and you think it's all bad, but it gets better. You just get good at picking them out, picking them out of your body, and you get good with gloves and how to pick things up and how not to do things. Let's see, here's another example of a miniature Labivia, just fantastic color play. That plant looks like it's on fire. I just can't wait to cross this with something like Flying Saucer or something like that and get it to be a bigger plant. I like bigger plants. I don't like so many miniatures. But if I was more into business, I would be doing more miniatures because quite literally, not everybody has a big yard. Some people just have a window space or a flight of stairs, and you can put a lot more miniature plants in a small area than you can a few large, big Trichoceros. I'll show you a few more. There's me. My favorite thing to do is go out with coffee in the morning, go take some photographs, and see what I can see. This is just one little tiny area of cactus blooming. I always call this my mega bloom. It should be happening right now, but because we've had such a prolonged winter, so much rain, not a lot of heat, we're about a month late on blooms. Our blooms are starting to come, but they're slow. Usually we get this one big giant kaboom of flowers, and it's the most amazing thing you've ever seen. And I'm hoping it does happen this year. It'll be the first year it didn't. So let's see a few more pictures. Here's a few more pictures in the back. So when you got a lot of plants, it's a really overwhelming thing to walk through. You don't know what to look at, what to take a picture of, what to take a video of. And half the time I have to get up, spend 15 minutes, have a cup of coffee, and then I gotta go to work because I'm still a school teacher. I'm a full-time school teacher. So I'm just doing this in my spare time. And it kills me. I mean, when I have to go to work and see that, it's like, oh. And then my wife will have people over and they're looking at the plants and I'm stuck at work, all that. But you gotta work. Making a living in just plants is difficult. Even if you have a big nursery. This is the front yard right here. You can see all the different cactus out there. This is just one of the planters we have, some different things. I try not to cut the plants in my garden because then you don't have any specimen plants. When I was first getting started, I'd cut everything, chop, 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 making more plants. Now I have enough plants, I don't cut anything in the garden. Doesn't matter. These are flying saucers in the foreground. This plant way over here is Sweet Aloha. I'll show you a picture of that one. More plants. See, we have a big canyon in the back. You can't do much with that. Big yellows. The only flower color we're not seeing yet is a really deep purple. I know it's genetically possible, but we haven't been able to do that one yet. This flower is about 9 inches. This is called Colin. This is also a Spanish hybrid. Unbelievable. Beautiful color. This is one of my hybrids. This is Dutchman's Gold times Flying Saucer. Came out yellow and white. You never know what you're going to get when you do these. I haven't seen a whole lot of ugly ones yet. So Yeah, some people say white's not that good, but there's some white ones that are just breathtaking. Let me go down a little bit. It's not always the size of the flower that counts. It can also be the bud count, how many flowers you get at one time. This is called Western Peach. This was one of the last hybrids that Hans Bridges of Western Cactus did before he passed away. And I remember eagerly waiting to get this one because when it flowers, it's just solid flowers. You can't see the plant. Sometimes in the garden, things come up by themselves. I love this little aloe seedling, little cactus seedling. I thought it was cute at first. Now it messes things up. So if you have plants with pots in it and it's labeled and you have a little seedling growing out, you don't know if it's an offset off of that plant or a seedling. So you got to be careful because if you're propagating these plants, you don't want to send somebody the wrong plant. Unless it's a really good mistake, like I said. So this is what got me started. This is Dutchman's orange. And so I was collecting these plants, I had some in the garden, and along came, actually, let me go back to that picture. Where did it go? Okay, step back to this. There's that little seedling right there. And I took it out, I thought, ooh, that's cool, I got a plant growing by itself. And I grew it up, and that's what it turned into. And that was no help from me. That came up by itself. It came off of one of my plants, either Flying Saucer or Dutchman's Gold or whatever. And if that came out without my help, I go, oh my gosh, what can I do if I start hybridizing these things together? So it's not rocket science to come up with beautiful plants. I mean, you try to keep records and you try to log what you're doing and all that kind of stuff, but all in all, the genetics just play out really amazing. But you do have to grow quite a few plants, and it can take a few years for them to flower, so that's all. Here's another little tiny Lobivia, just a little miniature Lobivia. That plant probably only gets 2 inches by 2 inches, and those flowers are about 3/4 of an inch. So when you do see these for sale on eBay and Etsy, just remember, it's about that big. Oh, this was part of COVID. I love this picture. This is my solo cup idea. During COVID and transport issues and people being laid off, we couldn't get any pots to save our life. I couldn't find 4-inch pots anywhere. I couldn't get 3-gallon pots. I couldn't do anything. I go, how are you supposed to sell plants if you can't put them in a pot? So I was thinking and thinking and thinking, and I thought, well, shoot, I got these red cups from Costco, and you could buy 480 of them for like nothing. I think it works out to 4 cents a piece. So you just take a couple of cups and an awl and you poke holes in the bottom, and they actually last really long. I've had plants potted in these pots since 2020, and they're doing great. And they don't fade that much either. And it's actually the same volume as a 4-inch pot, so you don't have to buy all these expensive pots to figure things out. So I thought that was a good hack for not being able to find a pot. All right, let's look at some other things. So I'm gonna go all the way back up to the top. So I'm kind of excited about this plant right here. Now people would say that's ugly or it's pretty, it's either one or the other. So I thought, well gee, what can I do with this? So the plant on the left here is a revert, like I was telling you at the beginning. And it did flower, and I put Flying Saucer on it. And so because it has a mutated genetics, this is actually one of the seedlings that came off of that plant. And not just a one-off, like 1 out of 1,000 will come out crested, but 30% of the seedlings came out crested. So that's a real trick. So anybody that wants to make crested plants, all you need is this one. It's called Trichoceres peruvianus. TPM is the acronym for this plant. I actually brought 2 cuttings of that plant, that particular plant right there. And so if you wanted to make your own hybrids, there's a Flying Saucer and there's a TPM, and you could cross them together. So I thought that's pretty interesting. And so crossing plants and hybridizing plants. So here goes my plant hybridizing 101. So one of the big problems with collecting pollen is every insect out there wants to eat your pollen. It's pure complex carbohydrates, and it's what makes the bug kingdom go, including the bees and the bugs. And it's not so much the bees in the daytime that strip your flowers. As soon as the sun comes up and the bees can figure out where they're flying, they're gonna fly to your plants and they're gonna have them stripped by about 8:30 in the morning. But there's also bugs that come out at night. And they'll actually crawl into the flower before it opens up. They'll weasel their way into the flower and eat all the pollen out of your flowers before they even open. So your flowers can open in the morning, you'll go out there at the crack of dawn, there's no pollen left. So this really kind of hampered a lot of my efforts for pollinating. Number one, I couldn't collect pollen. Number two, if you don't have any pollen, you can't make any hybrids. So I was on YouTube, I think it was Trichoceras website, and this guy had this video, and I'm watching this video, and he was using sock nylons, and he was putting them over the flowers like this. So as soon as the flower looks like it's gonna open, some of the sepals are already starting to peel back. You go ahead and you put your nylon on the flower, and the next day, it'll be slightly open, and all you have to do is pull it off, and it'll flower wide open within about 2 minutes, and you can collect all the pollen out of the flower or pollinate the flower. So I had a couple of plants yesterday that were right about to bloom, and this is why this time of the year is perfect, because I can show you this. The last time we were out of season, so I couldn't do this. So hopefully this works. So here we go. So let's say this is about 10 o'clock in the morning and I want to pollinate this plant. I put the sock nylon on it, which keeps about 95% of all the insects at night that are gonna rob my pollen, and it keeps any bees from interfering with my pollination. Because I don't want a bee to go to one flower and then to this flower and make its own open pollination cross. I want to be in control 100% of what I'm pollinating. So here we go. Let's see if this works. So you're gonna see it start to open up. And here goes another one. This is called Blusterbuter, which is a German name. If you translate it, it's blood brother. One of my favorite cactus. And this one is called Christina Dickerhoff. It's another Spanish name named after another Spanish person, obviously. So these are gonna open up. So a lot of people say, well, how did you get such vast quantities of pollen out of your plant? And a lot of people, you'll see videos where when the flowers open, they'll take some kind of a stick and a dish, and they're scraping all the pollen into a dish. That's a really difficult way to do it. It doesn't really work that great. You only get about a little bit of pollen if you're lucky. So a friend of mine found this video, I don't know where he found it, but he goes, dude, you gotta get one of these. So this is my magic pollen sucking device. This is actually a little tiny vacuum for keyboards. So yeah, any tech person knows you can clean up your keyboard with it. So basically, I'm gonna move this table over here. You push the button in the back, turns on. And what's nice about it is it has a sponge here, and it has a little filter which will keep all your pollen trapped inside so it doesn't get sucked into some other device. So you do that, and then let me see if I can get into this one. See if I'm successful on this end. Sometimes the bees do get in here and you end up sucking up a bee, but they don't die. You just open it back up and they fly away all covered in pollen and happy. I don't know what they do. If they go back to the hive and their friends lick them off or something, I don't know. Sounds horrible, but anyhow. So then you would open it back up. I got a little bit of pollen. And it's always good to have a brush, a nice animal hair brush of some sort, and then brush it all off into a metal container or something like that. And it's also good to brush off the part here to get a lot of pollen off. If you don't use a brush, you're gonna have half of your pollen just stick to the plastic. So you can brush all of that off. And it works quite well. Unfortunately, you buy one of these and you only get one head. So I ended up having to buy 4 of them so I could have 4 heads, because I can't just take pollen, go in the house, wash it, go all the way back. So I have to have a whole bunch of heads to put on there, and no, the company will not sell me just multiple heads. So that's unfortunate. So that's one way to collect the pollen. Once you have the pollen in a dish, you want to let it dry for about 2 days in the shade, inside your garage, inside your house. My wife puts up with me. I have pollen all over my house, especially when I did cycads. I'd have these cycad cones all over my bedroom and all over the house, and I think some of it was neurotoxic, you know, but anyhow, won't go there. Then you put it into these little tubes. You You can buy these online. I'll show you what they look like. And they're actually a write-on, so you can write on it. And if you have pollen in the refrigerator, your pollen will stay viable for at least a month. If you don't think you're going to use all of your pollen and you want to keep it frozen, you can put it in the freezer. It'll last for a couple of years, especially if you put dryerite crystals in it and those kinds of things. So it's nice to have a good pollen supply, because when they start blooming in the spring, some of the late summer, midsummer bloomers, you can now pollinate with your early spring bloomers. So you can get some real color contrasts and some of the flowers that open in the early spring versus the ones in the summertime. When you put those together, you'll get plants that will flower more often. They'll have more of a seasonal, like spring all the way to fall. And then whatever you do, if you do go to pollinate and you take pollen from this one to this one, you want to write on it. And I found that the simplest hack, instead of buying these expensive tags with strings, which you really can't do well because it's got spines all over the plant, is just use twister seals. They're paper with a wire, and you just get a felt tip pen and you write on what you're using to pollinate it with. And then when you're done with that, I always have the written part on the inside, and then I just go around it like that, kind of crimp it on a little bit, and there it is. Even if it gets rained on 20 times, you can still read the label. And it's like 1,000 twister seals for $5. It's pretty simple. So when it makes a seed pod and the seed pod splits, I take the pod off, I put it in a little container smaller than this with my label, I make a more formative label, and then I'll clean my seeds. And so a lot of people are they get to the seed cleaning part, or maybe the open pollination, the bugs did it, and they want to just collect seed and grow some seed. Nothing wrong with that. Well, they can't figure out how to get the seed away from the flesh of the plant. And there's every method on the planet where some people just let it dry like a fruit roll-up. I've tried that. It turns into a fruit roll-up. You can't get the seeds out. And if you try to rehydrate it, it just doesn't work. No matter what you try, it doesn't work. What I found is when the seed pod is fully ripe, you'll know it. It'll turn yellow or orange or red, and it will actually have a split. And you'll see black seeds in it. Then it's time to take that seed pod off. Don't twist it off, because you might take a piece of your cactus with it. So get a little knife, a butter knife or a steak knife, and cut that off. Put it in a pot, put a label in the pot, take it to your garage, and what I do is I just cut it in half, and I get a little, like a teaspoon, measuring spoon, and I scoop the flesh out, put it in here, fill it up with about, I don't know, a little bit of water, and then I just get my egg beater and just for about 5 minutes, and it separates the flesh from the seeds quite well. I've tried every method. I've tried putting dish soap, I've tried chemicals, I've tried everything to separate it, and it really, chemicals don't separate it. It's just a matter of mechanically separating it with an egg beater. Then you have no chemicals, and basically you'll see all this debris, all this white debris floating around, and you'll notice all your black seeds are at the bottom. It's kind of like gold mining. It literally is like gold mining. All your good seeds are going to float to the bottom. You'll see some black seeds floating in the water. Generally, those aren't your good seeds anyhow, or the chipped pieces. And you just pour off all the gunk, and you'll see a nice black amount of seeds at the bottom. Pour more water in there, beat it again, pour it off. After about 3 pours, you'll have almost 99% pure, clean seeds. I also, when it's cleaned, 3rd time, I fill it up with water a little bit more, and this is a good secret. I don't know if it's a secret, I think some people know it. And I put fungicide in there, and I soak it in fungicide for an hour. The fungicide I use is called Phison 20. It's a very safe fungicide. You should still use gloves, because it can burn your hands, and wear eye gear so you don't get splashed. It's still a chemical, despite how safe they say it is. Phison 20 keeps your seeds from collecting or harboring any bacteria or fungus. And that is one of the biggest reasons why people don't have success growing seeds. Even though they're using a sterile medium to grow their seeds on, their seeds already have fungus on them. So when they sow their seeds, they start to see things germinate, and maybe 2 weeks go by and they think they're doing great, and then the seeds start damping off. They start dying little by little by little. And then they're chasing it with fungicide, and they're trying to clean it all up. it's already too late by then. So if you start out with cleaning your seeds and then putting fungicide with it and then pouring that fungicide off, and then all you have to do is leave the seeds in here with the wet portion. So you're gonna pour off as much as you can. Your seeds are gonna still be stuck in there with a little bit of water. Just keep it inside your house where there's light coming in, and it'll evaporate in about 3 hours. And then you can put your hand in there and crumble it all up, and it's perfectly clean. Then you can put it in an envelope, label it, or go ahead and sow it and start growing it. So these are a few tricks that I've come across in the last few years. And let's see what else we're going to talk about. What time is it? Time flies, man. So that's pretty much it. I wanted to show you something else. So this is my Instagram page, and my Instagram page is Torchcactus. We're going to be done here in about 5 minutes, and then I'll answer any questions you have, and then if there's any help you need with the plants over here, we'll do that. So Facebook. Not everybody's on Facebook, and it's either you love it or you hate it, or both. And it is what it is. But there are a lot of really great plant groups. And there's a lot of power on this group because you can go onto a cactus group with a question. Hey, what's this? I do it all the time. There's a species, I don't know what it is. Hey, can anybody identify it? Of course, I always get 1 or 2 jokers who get it wrong. But then the vast majority, you'll figure it out. And you usually get a pretty good answer pretty quick. There's a lot of experts on there. So if you go to groups, you can find my group. I got 2 groups. I got this one. Over on the left, you can see the little cursor. This is Trichoceros and Echinopsis hybrids. We have about 4,500 people in this group, and it's just a place to show off your plants, ask questions, talk plants, do all that kind of stuff. But I also started my own Facebook group called Torchcactus where I sell. So if you join my group, you can see what I'm selling. And I usually post new items every Friday. Friday and Saturday I'll post new things. And I got people, they must have some kind of a program because as soon as I post, the plant's sold in 3 seconds. But there's always a lot of stuff on there. So this is First Light. It'll show you how much it is. If you do come by my nursery, it's a lot cheaper, I'll tell you that. But I have to pay to ship and do all these things, and all of it comes back on a 1099. So you know what I'm talking about. So here's like that plant I brought over here today. We have it for 20. Online it's 45. So I try to make some deals here. So there's just all kinds of things for sale. You can't comment on it or do anything on it. All you can do is look at it. But I found it to be a good forum for selling plants, and anybody can do this, really. So if you have plants and you want to sell plants, instead of making a website with Wix or GoDaddy or one of those platforms, which are incredibly labor intensive, this is about 20 times faster. I can load 10 items in 20 minutes. And it's super easy to manipulate. It interfaces with my photos really, really well. And I can eliminate things, change things, edit things. If you go into Wix or any of those platforms and you want to edit, it takes you all day. It's just really horrible. Here's another beautiful one. This is, what is that? Wurlitz. No, that's Maximilian. Beautiful, beautiful plant. Glows in the dark. So that's where you can view a lot of things. If you don't want to come to the nursery and you want it mailed to your doorstep, there it is. I just found out today that on Etsy, you can no longer call anything Trichoceros for sale. It's now on the official banned substances and controlled substances list. Because believe it or not, this plant right here is a Trichoceros, and it has more mescaline in the skin than peyote. So, but just don't call it peyote and you're okay. I don't mess around with that stuff. I don't advise it. It can kill you. It's not a good idea. So if you have a pet or a dog that likes to eat plants, I wouldn't have one of those. Now these plants that I brought over here today are not toxic, neurotoxic like that. So don't try to eat it or hallucinate with it. But people apparently do. That's why Trichoceros are in South America also referred to as a medicine man plant. because they do use it for spiritual and religious practices, just like peyote in this country. So there's just so many different things. I wanted to show you a few things. There's aloes on here. I do a lot of aloe hybrids as well. This is Beacon of Light, just a fantastic plant. That thing is fire engine red with just a brilliant yellow throat. Just fantastic, beautiful plant. And I think there's my Trichoceres peruvianus on the right. That gets 8 feet tall with white flowers. And I successfully crossed it with the miniature Libivia Nikita on the left, which is pink and yellow. And the seedlings are like that, and they're right over there. So that's something that I don't think's been done too many times, but I plan on doing it a lot more. And it's not easy to do this. I mean, to get my first seed pod off of that plant, I attempted about 35 times before I got one seed pod to take. But with that one seed pod, I got 1,200 seedlings out of it. One seed pod. It's like amazing amount of seed in there, especially if they all grow and you use fungicide and you clean it up like I told you. So there's all kinds of things. So this is kind of cool. We're taking the pink striped ones from Europe. We're crossing them with flying saucer just because of the genetics on flying saucer. I brought those tonight. There's another one. This is Bears 15 times flying saucer. Now when it's a seedling, don't be fooled. I mean, it's not going to look like that. It could, but I doubt it. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. It could be pink, it could be orange, it could be yellow, it could be red, it could be striped, it could be non-striped. We don't know. But it's going to be pretty, I know that. This is Pretty Baby times open pollination. So I don't know what did this, the bugs did it. But some of these plants that, I know my wife doesn't like hearing this, but this plant, I bought an offset from Spain. It was 1.5 inches tall, and I paid €200 for it. They're not cheap. There's some very wealthy people that collect these things, and if you don't outbid them, you don't get anything. And then half the time, the ag department got it, or customs got it, and so sometimes these plants cost a small fortune. But now I have enough that I can play with my own genetics and get my own stuff, and I don't need to import anything anymore. Here's another one. This is Fire Magic times flying saucer. I also have all these striped ones in my nursery at my house, and they will be for sale periodically throughout the year. And there's the seedling right there. That's about 14 months old from seed. Not too bad. I've gotten plants from seed to bloom in under 2 years, 18 months. That's not typical. Generally, it takes 2 to 2.5 years to get them to flower. But I've had other plants sit around for 7 years and never flower. I actually had to take the plant, tear the offsets off of it, basically shock it to heck, and then it flowered. When they're happy, they won't flower like that. But once they flower, they will continuously flower. So I don't want you to think you're going to buy a plant, and if you really take good care of it, it's not going to flower. That's not how it works. This is Bears 19 times flying saucer. This one's called Annette Leisky times flying saucer. So there's just all kinds of things in here you can see. There's a little Chamroceres times Libivia, beautiful plant. And super apricot, I believe there's 1 or 2 of those still sitting over there. Beautiful apricot color with that purple on the back, a little bit of purple mauve color. You can just keep going and going and going. Anyhow, that's who I am. Torchcactus, torchcactus.com. You go to Facebook and you join groups. You can look for Torchcactus. I basically let anybody in as long as you live in the United States because I don't ship out of the country. So, did anybody have any questions? Pollination or stuff? Because I'm pretty much done. Jim?
I think in every time I've listened to you, you mentioned something about taking a echinopsis or Libivia flower, which is normally small, right?
Yeah.
And you would put it on a large saucer.
Yeah.
Why do you always put the small one on the big flower and not the other way around?
You can do them both ways. So this is a result of taking a large plant and putting it on a small Libivia. Most of the plants come out looking like a Libivia, but they're much bigger in stature. I also like taking the Libivias and putting them on the bigger Trichoceres, do it the other way, because the Libivias have such amazing bright two-tone colors. I mean, just some of them are so contrasting and sharp, and they have stripes in them and all kinds of crazy stuff. I just want to get big flowers. I like big flowers. So I get the best of both worlds. When I take big plants and put them on miniatures, I get slightly larger plants with big flowers. This plant actually has flowers that are 7 inches in diameter, whereas a Labivia is 2 inches or 2.5 inches, maybe 3, but this is 2.5 times bigger. When I put Labivias on Trichoceros, I still get big flowers, but I get really clean, bright, sharp colors, which is also something that I'm after. I like big flowers. So, I mean, I don't know who doesn't. But I also like longevity, and I like lots of flowers. So it's not always about getting one big, giant flower. I would rather have something really full of flowers, good rebloomer. So there's a lot of different aspects that go into what I'm looking for, you know. Anybody else have a question? Yes?
One of the things that's common, especially around this time of year, on Epiphyllum is that you have blooms on it and the temperature changes a little bit and they fall off.
Yes.
Does it happen on that Trichoceros?
Yes, especially if you're shipping sometimes, I'll have little buds forming and it's nice and cool and we'll have a heat wave. Whoosh, it's 100 degrees. It went from 80 to 100 degrees and there's some evaporation and dehydration and oftentimes we'll lose buds. Plants will actually drop buds to conserve water or they just can't continue to grow those flowers out. But the buds will fall off and as soon as it equalizes, they'll grow new buds and start blooming. So it's not the end of the world. It's not like I lost my year of flowers. What I like about Trichoceros and Echinopsis is they keep reblooming. As long as you keep feeding them through the summertime, don't overfeed them, but feeding them fairly 6 to 8 weeks throughout the summer, spring, summer, and fall. Right about October, I quit. I want my fertilizer to be washed out by wintertime. And so it's not like you're growing a Claret's cup cactus. I don't know if you're familiar with Claret's cup cactus, Southwest, beautiful, beautiful flowers. They flower, the whole plant's covered with flowers, but it's 2 weeks and it's done for the year. You're never gonna see it rebloom. I mean, there might be a few rebloomers out there, but that's it. I just can't wait that long. So these really fit the bill because they rebloom so much. So if you missed something, it'll come back around. If it drops some buds, they'll come back around. And so they're pretty forgiving plants. They're easy to grow. There's not a whole lot of pests that mess with them. There are spider mite, but I haven't seen much of that. You know, you always gotta look for pests, especially if you're importing plants or buying plants from another nursery. Check it out, look it over. If you're paranoid like I am, anything that comes into my nursery, I put it in a special spot. I treat it immediately. I make sure it's clean before I introduce that into my larger nursery. Because there have been times I didn't do that. I bought a contaminated plant with scale on it, got into my nursery. The scale has a bloom cycle, not a bloom cycle, they're an insect. But there's a cycle where they all fly away. And they'll fly to all your plants, and then you got a lot of cleanup to do, and it's really hard to get rid of it. So it's easier to quarantine your plants and take care of them before you have an infestation. Yes, sir?
What is the soil that you use?
So there's all kinds of soils for all kinds of people and climates. It really has a lot to do with your climate. My climate's a lot more arid and dry compared to this climate right here. So this climate, you wouldn't have to water as much, but I always say a good 40% organic and 60% aggregate. And a lot of people I know, we talked about pumice and perlite, and there's this fight between pumice and perlite and which one's better. I use both. I use an equal amount of perlite to pumice. They do very different things. Pumice holds water, keeps your moisture very, not dry on top, not dry on the bottom or wet on the bottom. It keeps it nice and balanced. Perlite does one very important thing, even if you hate it, which I do, because it blows everywhere. I've had it blow in my eye, I've had to go to the doctor, you know, all of that. But perlite puts oxygen in your soil. One of the problems with potted plants is if you don't have perlite in it, your soil can start to collapse over time. It breaks down and it gets heavier and it becomes more anaerobic. There's less oxygen in it. And plants don't like that, especially these things. They like very oxygenated soil. So I find that I use a mixture of 30% perlite, 30% pumice, 10% washed sand. Don't use unwashed beach sand. Don't use just whatever sand. It's got to be washed sand. make sure of that. And so my blend is, what did I get? 30% perlite, 30% pumice, and there's 30% triple grind redwood. It's tiny stuff. And then I got a 1-to-1 soil amendment, which is really hot. It has, it's like fertilizer, and that's it. And they grow really well in it. So over the years, I've gotten to my soil to be more perlite, less organics. It just seems like they do better. And if they fill up that whole pot with roots, they're a lot happier. And you'll know if the soil's not doing well. If you unpot your plant and all the roots are on the outside, going down to the bottom and into the soil, and not filling up every square inch of that pot, your soil's too heavy. You need to lighten it up. And the easiest way to lighten it up is perlite. Now pumice is good too, but if you use 50% pumice or 60% pumice and 40% organics, it's gonna be very wet. Pumice keeps your organics really wet, and it has less oxygen in it, and you're lowering your pH. So you wanna keep your pH high with your soil, and that's what the redwood does. So if you wanna know more about soils, you can go and just Google my name on YouTube. Go to YouTube, put in Brent Wigand, and there's a million videos. This lady, Anna of Cactus Caffeine, I think she's got about 30,000 followers, does very simple how-to videos, how to care for your cactus, I just recommend her videos. She did about 8 different videos for me. One of them was on soil. Soil really depends on what kind of plants you're growing and what your climate's all about. And just finding the right ingredients and playing around with it. But a lot of times we're mixing soil and we put a lot of perlite and pumice in it, and you just think, man, that can't be right. But over time it is, because your organics are gonna break down. And when they do, they squish. You'll notice your soil will actually start sinking down in your pot. And then it becomes very dense, very anaerobic, and your plants aren't happy anymore. So there has to be a balance there. Anybody else have any questions? Yes?
What do you do if you get something that's infected? How do you treat it?
If it's infected?
Yeah, with bugs or...
Oh, bugs. Well, there's a variety of different things, organic and inorganic. I always say organics work really well. One of my simplest tricks, and believe it or not, I call the people, and it is technically organic. One of the simplest ways to kill bugs organically, and you never heard it from me, I use simple green, aspirin, and water. I don't know if I've told anybody about this. Has anybody heard this before? Okay, simple green is a fantastic substance. 6 ounces per gallon of simple green is about a 5% solution in water. So it's 1 gallon of water, 6 ounces of simple green, and you take about 3 aspirin or 4 aspirin and you crush those up and make a tea with that, and you put it in a little sprayer. The simple green by itself kills ants in 8 seconds. Try it sometime. Just get a bottle of simple green, spray a circle with ants trapped in the middle of it on cement. Watch the ants go across the simple green. They don't even get across the simple green line. They just die. And it is organic. I called the company. They won't tell me what's in it, of course. But yeah, of course, wear gloves, wear eye gear. But simple green, aspirin actually helps your plant become more resilient to bugs, and it doesn't burn your plant. The only big don't ever do this is don't ever mix simple green with any kind of soap, dish soap, Dawn liquid, anything like that. You're mixing 2 different types of chemicals together and you'll get ammonia gas. But you can kill almost everything, including alami, sucking insects, big insects, all kinds of insects with simple green and aspirin and water. Now there's other chemicals on the market that are a little more aggressive because mites can be very difficult to get rid of, and I use Forbid 4F, which is, I forget the active ingredient in that. Very expensive, you don't want to buy it. 8 ounces cost you about 150 bucks. Goes a long ways, but you have to suit up for that, wear a respirator, all that kind of stuff. So I would say go organic. There's a lot of good websites. You can go on any cactus site, say, hey, I have an infestation on my plant. You can go onto my site, Trichoceros and Echinopsis hybrids. I got these bugs. Does anybody have an organic way to kill them? You'll have 10 recipes by an hour. So that's why I do like some of these groups. They give you a lot of good answers. Of course, you gotta weed through the answers and just not take everybody's advice, because you might spray something on your plant that will burn it. But I've been using Simple Green for a long, long time. It really coats your plant. It stays on your plant for a while, and because it's a 5% solution, it doesn't burn your plant. Of course, I don't spray it on my plant when it's 100 degrees outside. I do it in the morning or the afternoon. You don't have to wash it off or do anything like that. But it works really well. It gets rid of ants. And so nurseries are using it. I have a friend who has a large nursery. I won't say who because he told me not to. But he's got bug problems. We all have ants. Ants travel and they take mites with them. If you can keep your ants under control, you can keep probably most of your pests under control, because ants move them all over the place. So he's now technically cleaning his pots with Simple Green. That's what he told the ag department. So he goes, oh, no, we're not using this as a pesticide. We're cleaning the pots before they go to market so that the ants will not go up the pots. It stays on there for quite a long time. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I use a lot of Simple Green. I buy it by the 2.5 gallon jugs.
So how often do you treat?
I usually in the springtime, you're gonna see bugs coming in, a couple of different things. We have some native glassy-wing sharpshooters, but there's another beetle that comes in. I have to use something broad spectrum on that because Simple Green won't kill them. They don't really kill your plant. They'll just try to suck into it and they'll put little spots on it. They're not really too bad. Mites, I really don't have a lot to deal with. I don't blanket spray my whole entire collection or garden because you don't want to kill all your beneficials too. So you want to pick a spot, clean that, and then wait a couple weeks, pick another spot and clean that. You don't want to just nuke everything, you know.
So let's say I treat it today,
Yeah.
then when do I?
With the Simple Green solution.
What's that? So like,
Simple Green solution.
okay, so if you had a bug on it, you could just spray it with Simple Green and aspirin. You don't even need the aspirin. You could just try Simple
Do you
Green and see what
repeat that
happens.
process on a cycle, or you just do it once and done?
A couple times a year. Yeah. I usually wait to see a pest and then I go after it. And I'm always looking for it.
So it looks like you just when you see the trouble.
Yeah,
treat it,
you can
then-
see it coming. You can usually see it coming. But if you let it go, they breed pretty quick and they can go all over. And one of the problems we have with growing agaves at our place is we have Hesperoyuccas growing wild all around us. And they harbor agave weevil. So the agave weevils are crawling through our yard all the time. Those are actually really hard to kill. And man, that's why half of our agave collection is gone. So if it's an agave in our yard, it's very hardy. There's quite a few agaves that agave weevils won't eat. But thank goodness agave weevils don't eat cactus. There's snout weevils and some different things like that, but we've never seen one in our property. And probably the worst thing you need to look for is nutgrass. I know you guys know what that is, right? I've gotten a couple of plants with nutgrass growing out of it. And man, if I don't need that plant, I'll just take the whole thing and throw it in the trash can. It's like having cancer in your garden. You can't get rid of it. There's a way to get rid of it. It's just really hard.
What did you call it?
Nutgrass. Yeah. You'll know it if you see it. Anyhow, anybody else have any questions? Oh, I hope you thought that was interesting. I know epiphyllums are very different than Trichoceros and Echinopsis, but if epiphyllums are stalactites, these are your stalagmites. There you go. I think I got that right. Stalactites, stalagmites, right? Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So anyhow, I'm having a good time. A really great array of colors with Trichoceros, Echinopsis, Labivias, and we're still working on new things. And so I hope next time, if I'm ever back, I'll have a lot of different new hybrids. And if you want to just see what I'm doing, you can follow me on Instagram at Torchcactus. I always post everything new on there. It's a great backup system. If your computer crashes and you posted it on Instagram, Instagram will probably always be around, and you can always retrieve photos that way. So it's nice to have as an archive. Okay, so that's it.
Another thing is nursery. It's on.
I'm in Willamar, yeah. Willamar, California.
Walmart, it's right next to Temecula. So
If you
it's
go at the
probably
right
like an
time,
hour
it's-
and a half drive from
It's an
here.
hour and a half if you go at the right time. If you go at the wrong time, you'll never get there.
Make sure you make an appointment though.
Yeah, I'll let you know. If you try to get there at the wrong time, I'll let you know. Because we have
He has
people.
all these plants over here for sale, so get them, they're probably a lot cheaper here than.
We have thousands of plants, and if you show up at our nursery, they're much cheaper than if I have to ship them. And if you want to take a look at any of this stuff, you're more than welcome. If you want to look at the vacuum, tubes,